The conference room smelled of stale coffee and printer ink, the kind of scent that clings to corporate life. I sat across from my boss, Richard Hayes, his polished desk a barrier between us. After 15 years at Pinnacle Analytics, I'd been called in for a quick chat. Richard leaned back in his chair, his tie loosened, his smile too sharp. "Marlene, you've been a great asset," he said, his voice smooth as ever. "But the industry's changing. We need fresh blood, younger perspectives. You're, what, 58? It's time to step aside." My breath caught, the words slicing through me. Fired. For being too old. My name is Marlene Carter, and in that moment, my world tilted. Richard slid a severance packet across the desk, his eyes already elsewhere. "Sign by tomorrow, and we'll make this easy." I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I picked up the packet, my hands steady, and walked out. He thought he'd erased me. He had no idea I'd make him beg to have me back. Life before that day had been a tapestry of routine and purpose, woven with care in Raleigh, North Carolina. My townhouse sat on a quiet street, its white exterior softened by a small garden where I nurtured roses, lavender, and basil. Mornings began with the ritual of brewing coffee, the rich aroma filling my kitchen as I tuned the radio to NPR's morning news. I'd linger at the window, watching neighbors walk their dogs or jog past, sometimes waving to Mrs. Ellison, who'd stop to compliment my blooms. The garden was my sanctuary, each petal a testament to patience, a reminder of the life I'd built after my divorce 2 decades ago. I'd pour coffee into my favorite ceramic mug, its chipped handle a relic of Lauren's teenage years, and sit at the oak table, planning my day. Those moments grounded me, a quiet pride in the independence I'd carved out, the home I'd made my own. Raleigh's warm days and vibrant energy suited me, its blend of historic charm and modern growth mirroring my own balance of tradition and adaptability. At Pinnacle Analytics, my career was the heartbeat of my days. For 15 years, I'd been a senior data analyst, transforming raw numbers into strategies that kept the company competitive. The open plan office buzzed with life, keyboards clacking, phones ringing, colleagues swapping ideas over cubicle walls. I thrived on the challenge of untangling complex datasets, finding patterns that others missed. My desk was a haven of organized chaos, spreadsheets pinned to a corkboard, a photo of Lauren at her college graduation, a potted succulent from a retiring coworker. I'd led projects that saved clients millions, like the predictive model for Horizon Enterprises, which boosted their revenue by 12%. My team, a mix of seasoned analysts and eager new hires, leaned on me for guidance. I mentored them through late-night brainstorming sessions, teaching them to spot anomalies or present findings with confidence. Over lunch in the break room, I'd share stories of Pinnacle's early days, when we were a scrappy startup, and they'd laugh, calling me the data whisperer. Those connections, forged over years, made the office feel like family. I'd sacrificed countless weekends, missed Lauren's recitals, even ignored the occasional headache from overwork, all to earn my place. Richard Hayes, my boss for 2 years, was a newcomer, a New Yorker with a penchant for flashy presentations and buzzwords. His arrival shifted the office's rhythm, but I thought I could navigate his ego, prove my worth. I was wrong. The signs of betrayal crept in slowly, like cracks in a foundation I'd trusted too long. Richard's comments started as jests, tossed out with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Marlene, still using a paper planner?" "That's old school," he'd say, waving his tablet as colleagues chuckled. I'd smile, but the words lingered, a subtle jab at my methods. At a team retreat, he teased, "Marlene's probably got floppy disks at home, right?" The laughter stung, and I noticed younger analysts glancing away, uncomfortable. I tried to adapt, learning new software, streamlining my reports, but the jabs sharpened. "We need a digital-first mindset," Richard said in a staff meeting, his eyes skimming past me. I felt the weight of that dismissal, a knot forming in my stomach. I'd catch myself double-checking my work, wondering if I was slipping, if age was dulling my edge. But my reports were still flawless, my clients still loyal. I pushed the doubt aside, focusing on the data, the numbers that never lied. In meetings, Richard's bias became clearer. He'd interrupt my presentations, asking younger analysts like Kyle or Priya for their fresh take, even when their suggestions mirrored mine. I'd spent weeks on a forecasting model, only to have Richard hand the client pitch to a 28-year-old hire with half my experience. "Kyle gets the new generation," he said, as if my decades of expertise were irrelevant. The new hires, all under 35, were assigned high-profile projects, while I was relegated to routine audits, tasks I could do in my sleep. I tried to speak up, scheduling a one-on-one with Richard. "I'd like more strategic roles," I said, keeping my tone professional. He nodded, promising to look into it, but nothing changed. Over coffee with Priya, a talented analyst I'd mentored, she confided, "Richard told us to focus on disruptive ideas. I think he means young." Her words echoed my fears, but I reassured her, hiding my unease. I'd been at Pinnacle longer than Richard. My work was my shield. Or so I believed. Then, a week before the firing, I found the email. It was late, the office quiet, my desk lamp casting a soft glow. I was checking my inbox when Richard's message appeared, accidentally CC'd to me. "Marlene Carter's position is redundant," it read, addressed to HR, "recommend termination to align with our youth-driven strategy. Her skill set is dated, and we need agile, digital native talent." The words burned into the screen, each one a betrayal of my loyalty. My hands trembled as I saved the email, my heart pounding. I sat back, staring at the ceiling, memories flooding in, a project I'd led in 2008, saving Pinnacle from a client exodus, the late nights teaching myself new algorithms, the applause after my Horizon presentation. All dismissed as dated. I thought of confronting Richard, demanding an explanation, but something stopped me. A memory surfaced, a conversation with my first mentor, Ellen, who'd been pushed out at 60. "Document everything," she'd said. "Your work is your power." I opened my personal drive, where I'd stored years of project files, and started organizing. Richard thought he could erase me. He was about to learn how wrong he was. In the car after the firing, the severance packet sat heavy on the passenger seat, its edges crisp and accusing. The parking lot was empty, the Raleigh skyline a faint glow against the dusk. My pulse thundered in my ears, a mix of rage and disbelief drowning out the hum of passing cars. 15 years, late nights crafting models, missed dinners with Lauren, the quiet pride of a job well done, reduced to too old. The words echoed, sharp and cruel, cutting deeper than I'd expected. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, and let the emotions crash over me. Anger at Richard's arrogance, his smug dismissal. Shame that I'd let it happen, that I'd trusted loyalty would protect me. Fear of what came next, starting over at 58, in an industry that worshipped youth. I thought of Lauren, building her career as a graphic designer in Atlanta. She'd always seen me as unstoppable, the mom who could solve any problem. What would she think now, seeing me cast aside? I pictured her face, her fierce belief in me, and the shame softened, replaced by a flicker of defiance. I pulled out my phone, tempted to call Richard, to plead my case, to demand answers. My thumb hovered over his name, but I stopped. Pleading would give him power, confirm his narrative that I was desperate, obsolete. Instead, I called Lauren. "Mom, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice sharp with concern. I told her everything, the firing, Richard's words, the email. My voice cracked, betraying the calm I'd tried to maintain. "They threw you away after 15 years, she said, anger lacing her words. "You're the best at what you do. They're idiots." Her certainty steadied me, a reminder of who I was beyond Richard's cruelty. We talked for an hour, her outrage mirroring mine, her encouragement a lifeline. "You're not done, Mom," she said. "Show them what you're made of." Hanging up, I felt the spark of resolve ignite. I wasn't the one who should be begging. Richard had underestimated me, assumed I'd fade into obscurity. But I'd spent my career finding order in chaos, solving puzzles others couldn't. This was my biggest challenge yet, and I'd solve it with the same precision. Back home, I sat at my kitchen table, the severance packet unopened, the scent of lavender from my garden drifting through the open window. The roses outside, their petals vibrant against the twilight, seemed to mock my turmoil. I'd tended them through storms, through drought, and they'd thrived. I would, too. I opened my laptop, the glow of the screen a beacon in the dim room. That email from Richard was my first weapon, a careless mistake that exposed his bias. I saved it, along with every performance review, glowing reports praising my exceptional insight and unmatched expertise. I pulled up project files, client emails, and feedback forms, each one a brick in the fortress of my career. But the real power lay in the data. For years, I'd led the development of Pinnacle's proprietary analytics platform, a system that powered 60% of our client contracts. I'd written the core code in the company's startup days, when we worked out of a cramped office with flickering lights. I'd updated it through every technological shift, ensuring it stayed ahead of competitors. Richard didn't understand the platform's mechanics, he just sold its results, flashing PowerPoint slides he barely comprehended. What Richard didn't know was my failsafe. Early on, I'd embedded a security protocol requiring my unique access key for major updates. It was a precaution, born of a startup's paranoia about data breaches, but it meant the platform couldn't evolve without me. I'd kept detailed documentation of every update, stored on my personal drive, not company servers. I hadn't planned to weaponize it, not consciously, but now it was my leverage. I thought of Ellen, my mentor, who'd warned me about corporate betrayal. "They'll take everything if you let them," she'd said, her voice heavy with experience. I wouldn't let them. I called Karen Ellis, my lawyer, a sharp woman I'd met at a women's networking event. Her office was lined with books and awards, a testament to her tenacity. "I've been wrongfully terminated," I told her, emailing the evidence, Richard's email, my reviews, platform documentation. "And I control something Pinnacle can't function without." I explained the access key, the platform's dependency, my years of unacknowledged work. Karen listened, her pen tapping rhythmically, her mind already strategizing. "This is age discrimination, clear as day," Karen said, her voice steady but laced with excitement. "The email's a smoking gun. And the platform? That's your trump card. They'll feel the pinch soon enough." She outlined our options: a demand letter for reinstatement, back pay, and damages, or a public discrimination claim that could tarnish Pinnacle's reputation. I hesitated, the thought of going public daunting. My career had been built on discretion, on letting my work speak. Exposing Richard meant exposing my humiliation, risking whispers in the industry. But silence meant letting him win, letting his youth-driven narrative erase me. I thought of Lauren, of Priya, of every woman who'd face the same dismissal if men like Richard went unchallenged. "Let's hit them hard," I said, my resolve hardening. Karen drafted a demand letter, concise but devastating, demanding my reinstatement, 6 months back pay, a public apology for discriminatory practices, and a guarantee of no retaliation. We sent it to Richard, the board, and HR, each recipient a domino in my plan. But I didn't stop there. I contacted Lisa Nguyen, the VP at Horizon Enterprises, Pinnacle's biggest client, whose $10 million contract depended on my platform. Over coffee at a downtown cafe, the Raleigh skyline visible through the window, I chose my words carefully. "I'm no longer with Pinnacle," I said, my tone neutral. "You might want to check the platform's maintenance schedule. Updates could be delayed." Lisa's eyes narrowed, her business instincts sharp. "What's going on, Marlene?" she asked. I smiled, sipping my latte. "Just a heads up. I'd hate for Horizon to be caught off guard." She nodded, understanding the subtext. I'd planted a seed, one that would grow into doubt about Pinnacle's reliability. Back home, I reviewed my documentation again, ensuring every file was secure. I thought of the platform's code, lines I'd written in the early 2000s, when Pinnacle was just a dream. It was mine, in a way Richard could never claim. I wasn't just fighting for my job. I was fighting for my legacy. The plan moved forward with quiet precision, each step a calculated strike. I returned the severance packet and signed, attaching a note, "Under review, pending legal advice." Richard called that afternoon, his voice tight with irritation. "Marlene, don't make this harder than it needs to be," he said, his New York accent clipped. "Take the severance and move on. You've had a good run." I let him talk, his arrogance a fuel I hadn't expected. "I'll consider my options," I replied, my voice calm but edged with steel. "You should consider yours." He laughed, a short, dismissive sound, but I caught the unease beneath it, a crack in his polished facade. Karen's letter hit the next day, and the calls increased. Richard's tone shifted, a hint of nervousness creeping in. "This is a misunderstanding," he said in a voicemail. "Let's talk, work out something reasonable." I didn't respond. Let him sweat. Meanwhile, I expanded my reach. I met with Lisa again, this time at Horizon's sleek office, where glass walls reflected the city's pulse. "Pinnacle's struggling with the platform," she said, her tone matter-of-fact. "Our last update failed, and they're dodging questions." "What's the real story?" I kept my cards close. "I'm not surprised," I said. "The platform's complex, and I handled most of its maintenance." Lisa's eyebrow arched, her mind connecting the dots. "If we pull the contract, where does that leave you?" she asked. I smiled. "I'm exploring options. I'd love to keep working with Horizon." The seed I'd planted was sprouting, and Pinnacle's grip on their biggest client was slipping. I also started a private LinkedIn group, inviting former colleagues, industry contacts, even Ellen, who'd retired but stayed connected. I shared my story, not with anger, but with precision: Richard's email, the firing, the pattern of sidelining older employees. I included anonymized examples from others at Pinnacle, analysts passed over for promotions, veterans pushed into early retirement. The group grew, with Priya and another colleague, Tom, adding their stories. "Richard told me I was too set in my ways," Tom wrote, then gave my project to a 25-year-old with no experience. Ellen chimed in, her words a rallying cry: "This isn't new. It's time we call it out." The chatter spread, reaching industry forums, recruiters, even clients. Richard's youth-driven vision was becoming a liability, his reputation fraying with every post. The storm broke a week later, when Pinnacle's platform crashed during a critical demo for Horizon. Without my access key, the team couldn't deploy a security update, and the system froze, displaying error codes that baffled the junior analysts. Lisa called me, her voice taut. "We lost 3 hours of uptime," she said. "Horizon's board is furious. We're drafting a termination notice for the contract." I listened, my heart steady. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, meaning it for Lisa, not Pinnacle. That evening, Priya texted me, her message frantic. "It's chaos here. Richard's screaming at everyone, and the tech team's clueless. They're begging for your login." I didn't respond. Let them flounder. Richard's calls became relentless, his voicemails a descent from confidence to desperation. "Marlene, we can fix this," he said in one, his voice cracking. "Come back, name your terms. We need you." I saved each message, evidence of his unraveling. The board's emergency meeting was the tipping point. Tom, still at Pinnacle, leaked the minutes to Karen. Carter's absence is a critical risk, one director wrote. Hayes' decision was reckless, exposing us to legal and financial liability. Another noted, client confidence is eroding. Horizon's exit could trigger a domino effect. I read the words at my kitchen table, the lavender scent from my garden mingling with the coffee in my mug. Reckless. That was Richard, betting on my silence and losing. The LinkedIn group was buzzing, with industry blogs picking up the story. Ageism allegations rock analytics firm, one headline read, quoting anonymized posts from our group. Pinnacle's stock dipped 8%, a quiet earthquake that shook Richard's world. The aftermath was a mix of victory and struggle. I filed a discrimination claim with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, a process that felt like wading through molasses. Depositions dragged on, with Richard's lawyers arguing I'd misinterpreted his intent. But Karen was a bulldog, uncovering a trove of emails showing Richard's pattern of targeting older employees. One message, sent to a board member, read, "We need to phase out the pre-digital generation. They're slowing us down." The evidence piled up, each document a nail in Pinnacle's defense. The company settled out of court, offering a $500,000 payout, a formal apology, and a promise to revise hiring practices. I accepted, but I didn't return. I'd started consulting, using my platform expertise to help smaller firms. My first client, a startup in Durham, was thrilled with my predictive model, which mirrored the one I'd built for Horizon. When Horizon pulled their contract from Pinnacle, they hired me as a consultant, a delicious irony that paid better than my old salary. But the transition wasn't seamless. I missed the office's rhythm, the banter with Priya and Tom, the satisfaction of a team win. Some nights, Richard's words, "too old," echoed, planting seeds of doubt. Was I out of touch, chasing a career that no longer wanted me? I'd sit in my garden, pruning roses, wrestling with those thoughts. Lauren's visits were a lifeline. She'd drive up from Atlanta, her energy a spark that reignited mine. Over dinner at a local bistro, she'd recount her own career battles, her pride in me palpable. "You didn't just win, Mom," she said, her fork pausing midair. "You're rewriting the rules. I'm telling everyone about you." Her words anchored me, reminding me why I'd fought. I also joined a women's tech network, where I met others who'd faced ageism. Their stories, of being overlooked, undervalued, mirrored mine, but so did their resilience. I wasn't alone, and that knowledge steadied me. Small victories piled up. My consulting firm grew, with 3 new clients by spring. I mentored a young analyst, Maya, who reminded me of Priya, teaching her to protect her work, to document every contribution. "You're like my work, Mom," Maya said, laughing, and I felt a warmth I hadn't expected. But there were setbacks. A client balked at my rates, citing market standards, and I had to fight the urge to undervalue myself. I held firm, and they signed, a reminder that my worth wasn't negotiable. Pinnacle, meanwhile, was bleeding. Horizon's exit triggered 2 more client defections, and the platform limped along, patched together by overworked juniors. Richard's LinkedIn profile showed a demotion to project lead, his bio stripped of its former bravado. The board had acted, their faith in his vision shattered. 9 months later, I stood in my garden, the roses in full bloom, their petals a riot of red and white against the Raleigh sky. My phone buzzed with an email from Richard, now a ghost of the man who'd fired me. "Marlene, I was wrong," he wrote, his words stripped of their old swagger. "Pinnacle needs you. I need you. Please come back, any role you want." I read it twice, the lavender scent from my herbs mingling with the morning air. Lauren called as I pruned, her voice bright. "Saw your name in a tech blog, Mom. They're calling you a trailblazer. How's it feel?" I laughed, clipping a thorn. "Pretty good," I said, meaning it. I deleted Richard's email, the act as final as shutting a door. My consulting firm was thriving, with 5 clients and a contract to teach analytics at a local university. I'd spoken at a women's tech conference, sharing my story to a room of nodding faces, women and men who'd faced their own battles. Maya was there, clapping loudly, her pride a mirror of Lauren's. I'd mentored others, too, teaching them to safeguard their work, to stand firm against dismissal. Pinnacle was a shell, its stock down 20%, its platform outdated without my updates. Industry blogs speculated about bankruptcy, citing leadership missteps. Richard's plea was a footnote, his empire crumbled by the arrogance he'd wielded like a weapon. I'd changed the game, not just for myself but for others, proving age was no barrier to impact. My garden bloomed, a testament to resilience, to thriving through storms. What do you do when someone tries to bury your light? You grow, until your brilliance blinds them.